Hey everyone, we are Group 7 and our topic is about interactional analysis. Our presentation has objectives, list of research methods, definition and key terms of IA, uses and benefits of interaction analysis which I will be discussed, and next the categories and phases of FIAC, IPA and IAM tourists. And a step on how to conduct IA, importance and sample book of IA. This will be discussed by Cristin Mae Bermas, and lastly, Michaila Iligan will be discussed types of interaction analysis, characteristic and process and advantage and disadvantage of IA, and she will be give some example of interaction analysis. Moving on, here's our four objective. Number one, to preserve and familiarize selected aspects of interaction analysis through observing distinct definitions. Number two, to acquire some knowledge, facts all about interaction analysis. Number three, to analyze and differentiate the types of interaction analysis. And lastly, to examine some examples and capture the significance of the said qualitative research method. Let's go to the next slide. The method can be used for this research study are qualitative method, quantitative method, survey method, case study method, experimental method, and Delphi study method. So the question is, what is interactional analysis? According to Bales, 1970, interaction analysis is an umbrella term for a set of systematic research techniques for Rel- reliably, reliably unitizing and coding sequential, naturally occurring interaction behaviors and making valid interpretations and inference from those data to the context in which the observations occurred. In short, this study is about communication processes between small groups. This technique observes small groups and the behaviors that take place to better understand the nature of the small group and the individuals that are incorporated. Next definition is according to Ganawardena 1997. Interaction analysis is the process of evaluating each process and determining the data requirements of each and developing a matrix of what data are used by what process. By mapping the data to the processes through interaction, all processes that do not have data either are invalid processes or represent missing data from valid processes. Conversely, by reverse mapping all processes to the data that have no associated processes are either extraneous data items or are missing the valid processes that need them. This mapping can take many forms, several will be covered here. For example, kunwari sa isang quiz sa pag-check ng sagot, bibilangin mo yung mali na sagot kesa sa tama para mas mapadali ang paghanap mo ng data. Next definition is according to Ned Flanders out of Social Psychological Theories. And interaction analysis is a technique for capturing quantitative and qualitative dimensions of teacher verbal behavior in the classroom. As an observational system, it captures the verbal behavior of teachers and students that is directly related to social emotional climate of the classroom. It was designed to test the effect of social emotional climate on students' attitude and learning. Flanders' interaction analysis system is an observational tool used to classify the verbal behavior of teachers and pupils as they interact in the classroom. Flanders' instrument was designed for observing only the verbal communication in the classroom, and non-verbal gestures are not taken into account. Next slide is the key terms of interaction analysis. Number one is data coding system. It is a process to classify and attach conceptual labels to empirical objects under study in order to organize and interpret them in the given research context. Coding of data can involve a quantitative or qualitative approach. Number two is interaction behavior. It is an action, or practice of two or more individuals who are mutually oriented toward each other's lives. Number three, categories. It is a class or group of things, people, possessing some quality or qualities in common. It is also a division in a system of classification. Next is the uses of interaction analysis. Researchers use interaction analysis for detailed analysis of what group members say and how they say it. The method allows the researchers to take the role of a complete observer as the unitizing coding and analysis of interaction is performed out of the group setting. Excuse me. Next slide is how to use interaction analysis. Number 1, content analysis. It is used to describe and categorize common words, phrases, and ideas and qualitative data. For example, a market research could perform a content analysis to find out what language is used in descriptions of therapeutic apps. Number 2, thematic analysis. It is used to identify and interpret patterns and themes in qualitative data. For example, a psychologist could apply thematic analysis to travel blogs to explore how tourism shapes self-identity. Number 3, textual analysis. It is used to examine the content, structure, and design of text. For example, a media researcher could use textual analysis to understand how news coverage of celebrities has changed in the past decades. Number 4, discourse analysis. It is used to study communication and how language used to achieve effects in specific contexts. For example, a political scientist could use discourse analysis to study how politicians generate trust in election campaigns. Next slide is the three benefits of interaction analysis. Number 1, it provides a picture of how acts are distributed across the group's conversation and across group members. Number 2, it showcases the interactive structure of the conversation. Number 3, it makes detection of patterns and sequence of acts positive. Next discussant is Miss Cristin Mae Bermas.
Hi everyone. As for continuation of Ms. Carillo's discussion, I'm going to tackle the topics about category spaces of FIAC, IPA, and IAM, theories, importance, and sample book of IA, and steps on how to conduct IA. Number 1. In 1969, Flanders Interaction Analysis Categories, also known as the FIACA, was introduced, wherein it is a technique of classroom interaction analysis that was tackled by Ms. Carillo as the definition number 3. And as you can see, it is composed of three possible conditions of communication in the classroom, such as number 1 is the teacher talk, number 2, people talk, lastly was the silence or confusion. Moving on to the teacher talk and people talk, who have two subtypes which are called the behaviors responsive, also known as the indirect influence, and the behaviors initiative or the direct influences. Okay, Flanders interaction analysis, what it is all about? What is the purpose of it? Well, as you all know, this is a type of interaction analysis wherein can helps us to understand classroom interaction and to determine the classroom climate. A type of analysis that is consist of 10 categories from its possible conditions. Number 1 is accept feeling, praises of or encourages, accept or uses people's idea, ask questions, are the part of the direct influence. While on the other hand, Lecturing, giving directions, and criticizing or justifying authority are part of the indirect influences of teacher talk in the classroom setting. Moving on to the next topic of possible conditions of communication, which is the people talk, who have people talk responses and people talk initiation. This is where the people's interaction are being observed. Lastly was the silence or confusion, who have the categories of silence and confusion of the students and teacher when they are interacting or communicating to each other. So number 2, 1970 Bill's Interaction Process Analysis, also known as the IPA. It consists of four macro categories such as the positive social-emotional, active task, passive task, and the negative social-emotional, and has been divided into 12 specific code scheme categories. First was the positive social-emotional, who shows solidarity or seems friendly, shows tension, release of dramatizes, and the last one is agrees. Second is the letter B, the active task which is presented to gives chance to suggest, gives opinion, and gives orientation. Letter C is for passive task, which is consist of ask for orientation, ask for opinion, and ask for suggestions. Last was the negative socio-emotional, who disagrees, shows tensions, shows antagonism, or seems unfriendly. Well, Bale's interaction process analysis, which is stated as one of the definition of interaction analysis, who have the main goal to study and empirically investigates the manner in which cultural diversity and communication mode affects team communication process. Well, best illustration of this is the sudden shift of face-to-face classes to computer-mediated communication, wherein everybody are mostly inclined with the gadgets just to do their jobs and make some school works, paperworks that are relevant in order to finish their studies despite existence of the pandemic. Moving on to the second definition of interaction analysis is the 1997 Ganawardena, Lowy, and Anderson's interaction analysis model, also known as the IAM, wherein it is composed of 5 interaction analysis model phases such as number 1 is sharing comparing, which is definitely refers to the statement of observation or opinion, as well as the statement of agreement between the participants. The next one is the dissonance, with the operation of identifying areas of disagreement, asking and answering questions to clarify disagreements. The third one is negotiation. Okay, negotiation and co-construction, which is defined as the negotiation meaning of terms and of the relative weight to be used for various agreement in the interaction analysis. Number 4 is testing tentative construction. This is where testing the proposed new knowledge against existing theory, personal experience, or other sources that are being presented. Lastly was the number 5. It was the statement or application of newly construct knowledge, wherein it summarizes agreement and metacognitive statements that shows knowledge constructions. And that was the last interaction analysis definition from Ganawadarna. Okay, moving on to the next topic, which is importance and example book covers of interaction analysis. Okay, interaction analysis is used by researchers to conduct in-depth analysis of what group members say and how they say it. It examines human behavior such as talking, nonverbal interaction, and the use of objects and technologies, identifying routines, habits, and issues, as well as the resources to address them. Moreover, since the interaction is unitized, coded, and analyzed outside of the group context behavior, we, and English majors, are mostly suggested to conduct this type of research design for us to enhance our analytic skills and broaden our topic or knowledge in terms of examining some problems that can make us to become a complete observers. Moving on to the next slide is that I'm going to show you some of the book covers of those readings that can help you to become more knowledgeable in terms of conducting interaction analysis. Okay, the first is group interaction analysis by Browner, Booth, and Colby. Second is the interaction analysis theory, research and application by Amedon and Ho. And last but not the least is the fluid structure of interactions created by Mr. Thomas Richer. Okay, moving on to the steps of interaction analysis. Right now, I'm going to discuss the 10th step on conducting an interaction analysis research design. Step 1. Identify and develop your topic. Step 2. Do a preliminary search for information. Number 3. Locate review of related literature. Number 4. Write your paper. Number 5. Prepare and organize your data. Number 6. Review and explore your data. Number 7. Develop a data coding system. Number 8. Assign codes to the data. Number 9 is cite your sources properly. And the step 10, the last is proofread. Step number 1. Identify and develop your topic. Okay, as you all know, the most difficult aspect of a research project is choosing a topic. This is the time where we are in need to choose a topic that has a manageable amount of information based on what research we are going to conduct. Okay, step 2. Conduct a preliminary information search. Conduct it to determine whether there is a sufficient information available for your needs and to establish the context for your research. Look up your keywords that is appropriate on your title and can adjust topics focus based on the resources available to you. Okay, step number 3. This is where the researchers may begin by searching for material and RRL in books, library, electronics, periodical databases, or search engines such as Google, Yahoo, and many more. Step number 4. Compose your paper. This is when you start by organizing the data you've gathered. The rough draft is the next step, in which you get your ideas down on your paper in unfinished state. This step will assist you in organizing your thoughts and determine the format of your final paper. Following that, you will revise the draft as many times as you believe as necessary to produce a final project or product for submission to your instructor. Step number 5. Prepare and organize your data. This could include transcribing, interviews, and type up field notes. So, dito na yung mag-interview na kayo, maghanap na kayo ibang iba't sources, and gamit ang respondents nyo. Okay, step 6 is review and explore your data. This is where we examine the data for patterns or recurring ideas we found for our studies. Okay, from the step 7, develop a data coding system. Okay, after coming up with some initial ideas, this is where the researcher will need to create a set of codes to categorize the data. Okay, step 8 is assign codes to the data. This section is intended for researchers who will conduct qualitative survey analysis, which may entitle going through each participant's responses and categorizing those or them in the spreadsheets. This is where researchers can generate new codes to incorporate into their system as needed. Step 9 rather. Cite your sources properly. This is where plagiarism can be avoided, wherein after completing the major steps of the interaction analysis design, you must cite your sources and give credits where credits is due. Use the two common citation format, which is the MLA and the APA. If you're going to use the APA, please, I suggest to use the 7th edition kasi was the most common lately. Okay, step 10. Proofread. This is the last step in the process is to proofread the paper you've written. Check for spelling, grammar, and punctuations error as you read through text. Check that the sources you used are properly cited. Make certain that the message you can convey to the reader is clearly stated. Okay, so that's all for my part. Now, let us listen to Miss Iligan's discussions regarding the types, characteristic, processes, examples, and advantages and disadvantages of the interaction analysis research design.
Interaction analysis. But let's first define again the qualitative interaction analysis. Qualitative interaction analysis is a set of approaches that focus on the language in use to understand how people jointly construct the meanings of their interactions. These approaches seek to identify and explain the structures and processes that enable people to produce meaningful interactions. The approaches share a preference for analyzing naturally occurring interaction, and the analyses they produce are situated. However, the approaches differ in the extent to which the analysis considers contextual factors outside the interaction. This entry examines three approaches to qualitative interaction. Ito na nga po yung conversation analysis, discourse analysis, and critical discourse analysis. Ito po yung three types ng interaction analysis. So, as you can see, here are the three types of interaction analysis. First is conversation analysis. It focuses on how speakers themselves interpret each other's input to the conversation and also on how talk as a form of social action is organized into sequential method. The aim is to discover how participants understand and respond to one another. It is used to understand the meanings of real language and how people really speak. The second one is discourse analysis. It focuses on social aspect of communication and the ways people use language to achieve specific effects. Its aim is to understand how language is used in real-life situations. It is used to examine how language functions and how meaning is created in different social contexts. The third one is the critical discourse analysis. Its focus is the role of discursive practices in the maintenance of the social order and in social change. The aim is to explore the links between language use and social practices. Critical discourse analysis is used to understand and examine any forms of speech that may be used to manipulate the impression given to the audience. Here are the example research papers in qualitative interaction analysis. So, ito po yung mga example ng three types ng interaction analysis. Sa conversation analysis, we have the web-based activities and SLA, a conversation analysis research by R. Negretti, 1999. Dito naman sa discourse analysis, we have the uses of discourse analysis in the study of gender and migration by G. Griffin, 2007. The last one is critical discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis, a sample study of extremism by John P. O'Regan and Ann Betzel, 2015. So let's move on to the characteristics of interaction analysis. So as you can see, nandito yung mga characteristics of IA. It is written in here that the methods on generating the data are elicited and naturalistic. Elicited means to evoke or draw out a response or answer from someone in reaction to one's own action or question. So, ito yung gusto nating makuha dito. Since the interaction analysis is observing on how a person responds to another. For example is the student-teacher interaction within the classroom. Elicited and naturalistic. Elicited means to evoke or draw out a response or answer from someone in reaction to one's own action or question. So, ito yung gusto nating makuha dito. Since the interaction analysis is observing on how a person responds to another. For example is the student-teacher interaction within the classroom. Ino-observe dito kung paano mag-respond yung student and paano rin mag-respond yung teacher. And sinasabi dito na it is naturalistic. Naturalistic because it is based on a real-life situation. The mode that is being used in this analysis is spoken, and the type of analysis is interpretative, because that is what we have to do, to observe and interpret. Ganito yung ginagawa dito sa interaction analysis. Units of analysis are both linguistic and non-linguistic. Dito naman tayo sa process of interaction. We have the simple process of interaction, as you can see, wherein the first person input its message going to the second person, where he or she comprehend the message that was sent. After the comprehension, the second person will input its message going to the first person to also comprehend or understand. And that's where the negotiation or interaction happens. Pabalik-balik lang siya. So, mag-uumpisa muna sa first person, mag-i-input siya ng message papunta dun sa pangalawang person, tapos, iintindihin niya yon. Kailangan intindihin niya yun bago siya mag-send ulit ng message papunta naman dun sa first person. So, yan yung process of interaction. So, moving on to the advantage and disadvantage of IA, or interaction analysis. The advantage of doing the IA is its flexibility. There are no highly formalized procedures for collecting and analyzing data. So, dito sa IA is flexible siya. Meaning, wala siyang formal na sinusunod na procedures kung paano i-analyze ang data, unlike other methods na strict ang procedures. The disadvantage is the lack of explicit guidelines may cause the researcher to lose the way. If there is no formal or proper procedures or guidelines, it will be hard for the researchers to come up with their analyzation. The last one is here. The example research study of interaction analysis. The first one is an analysis of English teacher and learner talk in the classroom interaction by Michaila H and Cristin Mae F, 2018. The objectives of this research were to find out the kinds of teacher talk and learner talk used by action analysis. The first one is an analysis of English teacher and learner talk in the classroom interaction by Michaila H and Cristin Mae F, 2018. The objectives of this research were to find out the kinds of teacher talk and learner talk used by English teacher and learners during the classroom interaction and to know the language mostly used in classroom. So after this research study, the results were English teacher dominated the class by asking so many questions and mostly used Indonesian language during the classroom was taking place. It gave the students less chance to explore and practice their English. Second one is the analysis of verbal interaction between student and teacher in the classroom by Firdaus NF 2018. The objectives is to find out the verbal interaction in classroom between teacher and students in classroom. The result, the researcher has been found that the kinds of verbal interaction between students and teacher in classroom. There were interpersonal interaction, interpersonal interactions, small group interaction, and public interaction. So here is the last example. The last example of research study of IA. Here's the title, Study of Interaction Analysis and Changes in the Self of Student Teachers by Bill CM 1976. The purpose of this investigation was to determine if student teachers who were given interaction analysis feedback, in addition to observations and conferences, exhibited greater self-concept changes than those who were supervised by only observations and conferences. So here is the result. The difference between the experimental group and the control group change in scores on the self as a teacher scale and on the self as a person scale not found to be statistically significant. So yan po yung tatlong